Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. My name is Sean, and I'm delighted you are joining us for today's ESBC Community Webinar. Today, I am joined by Aidan Finn, MVP, who will cover your Azure migration project is doomed to fail. We love hearing what you guys have to say, so remember to join in on the conversation about today's webinar and more on X. Our handle is at ESBC_community, and our hashtag is hashtag ESBC24. Tweet us, tag us, and tell us what you learned. Don't forget to check out our Learning Hub, which is updated with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. You can access and view the Learning Hub by visiting our website, sharepointeurope.com, and clicking the content tab at the top. Don't let the learning stop here. Continue to keep up and stay ahead by joining us for the next Azure Week webinar, SOC in an hour, with Bed Thomas. This webinar takes place Tuesday, the 16th of July, 2024, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. CEST. For more information on this webinar, please check out www.sharepointeurope.com/register for webinars. Join us for exclusive opportunity at hashtag FabConEurope with our super early bird sale. Act now and secure a ticket before Friday, July 19th, to unlock incredible savings of up to €700. Don't delay, register today and reserve your place and take advantage of this limited time offer. Book your tickets today at www.sharepointeurope.com/European Microsoft Fabric Community Conference. Early bird sale alert for hashtag ESBC24. Dive deep into the latest governance, Azure, SharePoint, Copilot, Microsoft Teams, Viva Topics, API, AI, Microsoft Entra, Power Automate, Microsoft Purview, and more. Don't miss out. Register your interest today at sharepointeurope.com/European ESPC. After this webinar, we'll have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you might have into the questions box. Questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Center, where you'll be notified by email when it is available. And now, I'm going to pass you over to today's webinar presenter, Aidan. Hello, Aidan. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Sean. Hi, everybody. Okay, now let's share my screen. And I want that screen. Hopefully you're all seeing my PowerPoint, Sean.
Yeah, I can see your PowerPoint there, Aidan.
Brilliant, thanks very much. So today's session, let's go with doom and gloom to wrap up the day, shall we? Your cloud migration project is doomed to fail. So I'm Aidan Finn. I am, as Sean said, I'm Microsoft Most Valuable Professional, or MVP. Last week I celebrated the start of my 17th year. My expertise is in Microsoft Azure. Before this, I was Hyper-V and System Center Configuration Manager. My day job, I work as a principal consultant for Innofactor. I actually work for the Norwegian office of Innofactor, a Nordic consulting company. The team I work in specializes in Azure infrastructure. So we get customers up into the cloud. I work on the infrastructure, the platform resources side, and I'm kind of seen as the subject matter expert on networking and security stuff. I have my own company as well called Cloud Mechanics, where I write and deliver my own Azure training. So not Microsoft written or anything like that. I literally write it myself. I've been working in IT since 1996, so I've seen a lot of things over the years. I've seen a lot of change. I've seen a lot of projects, and the last 5-6 years, I've been working with Innofactor. I've been working with mid to large sized customers, and I've seen a lot of projects that kind of have inspired this presentation. You can read a lot of the stuff that I write on aidanfinn.com. You can learn about my company at cloudmechanics.com. You can learn about Innofactor on innofactor.com, and you can follow me on Twitter. I'm sticking with that, Elon, on @Joe_Elway. So this is not just an Azure story. I might be focused on Azure, and I'm going to lean towards Azure in this presentation, but everything here isn't actually about the technology. It's about the people. This is where the failings happen, and it's where the solutions have to happen. It's the people. So I'm going to talk about this stuff. I'm going to talk about, you know, various different scenarios that I've seen happen in Azure. I know they happen on AWS. I know they happen with GCP, and the solution is kind of similar for all three. So we'll talk about that later on. Let's talk about what the cloud is supposed to offer, and it's supposed to offer to business, which is we're supposed to be bringing self-service, we're supposed to be bringing agility, we're supposed to bring technology that enables the business to actually do things. And not just do things the same way they've always done them, but to bring new ways of doing things, potentially even becoming a market disruptor. So being the first in the market to do something and seize a large part of the market. That's what competition and business is all about. Survival is growing. And if you're not the one that's changing and evolving, you're the one that's shrinking and dying. So we should be enabling that when we bring cloud to the business, not bringing cloud as a new location to IT. And that's the failure, the major failure in what we deliver. Now, let's talk about one of the first kind of failures we see, which is governance. So covering things like compliance, security, and finance. I'm going to tell you some stories today. And while none of these stories are actually about any one organization or any set of people, they are based on my experiences, either directly or what I've observed indirectly. So if you are someone who has worked with me in the past, none of these stories are about you. So let me introduce you to the IT manager of Acme. And she would like to move to the cloud. That's a common conversation, huh? Along comes the salesperson of a consulting company and says, sure, we can help you with that. Of course he will. Well, the deadline is 6 months. And if you are an IT consultant who has worked on cloud migrations, that's not an unusual conversation. Oh, 6 months, 12 months. Oh, they all have, so many months, and it's a hard deadline of some kind. Okay, we better get started then. And this is where we, as consultants who are experienced in moving customers to the cloud, we're going to say, can we talk to the chief information officer, the chief security officer? Can we talk to finance? And what's the response? No, they're too busy. You're going to deal with me, the IT manager. I know all that stuff anyway. So I know how the finance works. I know the security requirements. I know the governance requirements. You come to me, you come to my team. We just need you to start putting things in the cloud. 2 months into the migration. Oh, he doesn't look happy, does he? He's in charge of governance, and he is not happy because he did not approve stuff being deployed in that particular cloud region or Azure region. So, for example, maybe we stuff things into West Europe, and that's not allowed under some law for that country. So in Norway, for example, we have a thing called the Archive law, where when it was applicable, you could not put certain information outside of Norway. You were restricted to only using Norway or Norway East, which then led to other technical challenges. Finance are also upset because we've messed up their accounting. They have no visibility of how spending is being done anymore. They're not able to control it. They were probably doing tax write-offs based on capital expenditure. And now we've moved to where we're not buying hard assets anymore. We're doing operational expenditure. So how they do their taxes is completely in a mess. And security, they're definitely not happy because all the old tooling that they used to use, well, maybe they were using Palo Alto Cortex instead of a proper SIEM. Now it doesn't work anymore. Or they were using McAfee antivirus, and all of a sudden we're using Microsoft antivirus. And they're not happy. They've not evaluated any of this stuff. They've not signed off on it. So we'll just change those things and continue. That's easy, right? I mean, if you put stuff into the wrong cloud region, you can just move it, right? Not quite true. So we just spent 2 months putting stuff into the cloud. It's your time, your money we've spent, Miss Customer. We're going to have to redeploy everything. And it's going to be your time and your money, not ours, because you made the mistakes in telling us where to put things or not correctly telling us where to put things. So, root cause here, conversations are limited. You're told, just deploy things. When you asked to talk to governance, or to security, when you asked to talk to finance, you were told, no, come to IT. And what do IT know about those things? Only what they've been told to know. They don't know about the bigger picture. They don't know about all the compliance requirements. It's not their expertise. IT deploy things and manage things and monitor things. They're not in charge of those other verticals, just like they're not in charge of IT. And so the consultant didn't have access to the right people. So it's all gone wrong. And if they're not able to have deep conversations, if everything's limited to like a 30-minute Teams call, which is very common in these sorts of projects, then you don't have enough information to be able to build up the governance framework. You don't have enough information to be able to inform security about what's actually going to be done, or what, to learn from security what their requirements are and find, some way of modernizing what they're doing that's compatible with the cloud. You don't know what the compliance requirements are of the organization. There are health requirements that are specialized to a local market, or PCI DSS requirements. Are there any specializations around GDPR? You don't know what the actual requirements are. So how can you possibly build a governance solution in the cloud if you don't know what the requirements are of governance in the first place? So, those conversations have to be had. Warning signs of this is going to happen. Well, the sponsor is an IT manager. I'm going to give you a spoiler alert here. This is going to be a common theme. You cannot talk to anyone outside of the sponsor's team. Every time you go to them, they tell you, yeah, either I have the answer or one of my team has the answer. And your discussions, as I said, with people like security, compliance, governance, and finance are very limited, if at all. Maybe you get a 30-minute Teams call or Zoom call. And that's not enough to be able to define the actual requirements of the organization in those particular pillars. The next failure is staff involvement. So this is the IT staff of the organization itself. So who's going to run the cloud afterwards? So at the start of this project, consultants should be asking, how are we going to involve your team in this project? Because we want them to be included at the start, not just to ask them questions, but we want to actually educate them and raise their skill levels because they've never worked with the cloud before. Oh, well, the team is very busy. They're doing other things. There's other internal projects that need to be done. So Miss IT Manager wants the consultants to do all of the work, all of the build out themselves, and just do a handover at the very end. Very common in these sorts of projects. The migration is done. And, oh, this is good. IT Manager is happy. She's very happy with the migration. Everything's up and running. Everything's healthy. Everything looks secure. Performance is good. Users are reporting that they're happy. And now she wants to do a handover from the consultants to her team. So she's happy to schedule something over 2 days and just do a brain dump. So her team are going to learn how Azure networking works, how security works, how Azure Monitor works, how all these different things work in a couple of days. And also learn about what's been deployed. So it's not just learn how these things work, but learn about everything that's been built. Oh, and learn how to do DevOps and GitHub and infrastructure as code, and all the fun and games that goes with Terraform state files or whatever it is. Now, the consultants are like, that's not going to work. We've been there. We don't want to cause your staff to have an aneurysm and have blood running down their nose from their brains. Can we do something a bit more gradual, a slower handover process, maybe do a managed service and slowly hand over responsibility to your team? Nope, don't need to. My team are really, really good. They can handle it. They know what they're doing. 1 week later, oh, he looks happy, right? Ask the system administrator. And he's not happy because clearly this Azure stuff that's been handed over is broken because it doesn't work. He's trying to do stuff and it just isn't working. And he's insisting that either this cloud thing is rebuilt or they put everything back on the on-premises Nutanix clusters. Oh, well, that's not good. Oh, hold on. She's introducing herself again to somebody. Hi, I'm the IT manager at Acme Incorporated. We would like to move to the cloud. The previous consulting company we hired were not very good. She's different. Another consultant. She's happy to help with moving this customer to the cloud. What's happened? Well, the IT team were handed over Azure, didn't like what they were given because they didn't know how it worked, assumed it was all broken, and blamed the consultants. So the solution is hire new consultants to do it all over again. Well, what's the root cause here? The IT department, the IT manager in this case, has assumed that the cloud is just an alternative to VMware, Hyper-V, Nutanix, whatever it is. It's another place to run virtual machines. They don't understand that this is a completely different compute environment. Heck, we haven't even talked about things like Service Fabric or Azure Kubernetes Service, container apps, any of that stuff. We're just talking about basic compute, and they still don't understand the big differences between going from their physical on-premises data center, even if it's virtualized, it's still physical, going to a completely software-defined self-service environment that's supposed to be run by the developers and the operators. There's no skills development. Nobody's gone on training, and even going on a 5-day training course doesn't prepare you for what's going to be handed over. You need to actually spend months at this and learning about what's being built for you and how it's actually going to work. Not learning, the theory has been written by some, training course author. You need real world experience from the consultants. There's the whole build has been outsourced to the consultants with very little involvement of the internal IT department. And the biggest symptom, and you'll spot this right at the start of the project when the customer is building out this waterfall project plan, and that's not good, is that there's going to be a few days of handover at the very end. That's the biggest symptom that you're going to have this failure. Warning signs, I've kind of hinted at this. IT is not going to deploy anything. You're having conversations with the IT team. They're not answering any questions because they don't know what you're asking about. They've never dealt with the cloud before. They've been focused on, physical switches, physical routers, VMware or Nutanix. They've never dealt with any of this Azure stuff or cloud stuff. Consultants are going to be doing a handover. The IT team doesn't even ask you any questions because they're scared of showing that they don't know what they don't know. Now, the last one, adoption failure. Adoption. What is this? Adoption is what happens after you do that first build or that migration project. It's when the business is supposed to start using the cloud, not just using migrated systems, but using the cloud. So developers start coming in and using new system, they're using this new platform to build new applications, build new solutions for the business. And that's really what drives the cloud. That's where you start getting the innovation. So it's not just, oh, we've taken this 20-year-old client server application and dumped it up in the cloud. Now the developers are going to come in into this governance framework and they're going to start building these big data solutions or AI solutions. That's real adoption. Now, we've already done the migration. 18 months after the migration, can't get different departments to use the cloud. Can you all train them, please? Yeah, we can look into that. That's interesting. Who's this person? I'm the leader of the development team at Acme Incorporated. Huh, she works with Miss IT Manager. We love what you built for our IT team, but we hate using it. Can you build something similar for us, but enable self-service and agility? Wait, aren't you supposed to have self-service and agility in the cloud? That is confusing. Oh, here's IT Manager again. Nope, that's not happening. We have ITIL processes and security standards. All platform work must be done by my team. So the developers want to know, how do we get something done? That's the classic answer. Open a help desk ticket. We handle tickets within 2 to 5 days after a sizing and specification process. 3 months later, I'm the new IT manager at Acme Incorporated. My predecessor hired a bad consulting company to do our cloud migration. It's broken and we have no idea how to manage costs. Can you do a cloud migration in the next 6 months? And that is what happens, folks. There's failure and then there's failure. That's absolutely monstrous failure. The cloud was delivered, but IT came along and locked it up in classic help desk ticket processes and stopped it from being an agile environment for the developers and the operators to work in, and just treated it as the physical on-premises data center that they've always dealt with in the past. So the cloud migration that the consultants delivered, well, first time it was successful, but the IT team didn't know how to use it. So second time it was built, and now the IT team were involved and they got trained, but they locked it down and create custom roles and lock things down so nobody could do anything, and developers basically had to come begging for another bowl of gruel. Project was finished on time, migrated stuff's working, budget was fine, but the developers and the operators can't use this environment, or just don't want to, because it's not what they expect from the cloud. So why did this happen? It's because this was treated as a typical IT operations project. They moved what they had to another location. They didn't change anything other than the location of where the systems are run. And that is a transformation failure. So think about what the cloud lifecycle is. We have the cloud migration or the initial build out, hey, and we get into the cloud, and then that should be followed by adoption by the business. So the developers, the operators start building out new things, and the business starts using those new things. And that should be, if we think about the key traits of the cloud, one of those key traits is self-service. And it's important, obviously, that we have the governance to put guardrails around that self-service. That goes without saying. Remember the governance person earlier on. But cloud adoption, it should change how IT is delivered. It should change how IT is used. The key difference between a cloud migration and the cloud adoption is the sponsor. The cloud migration is the IT manager. All they're worried about is moving existing systems to the cloud. Cloud adoption, it should be someone senior to that IT manager. In fact, it should be the leadership of the business, because the scope of change is not just the IT operations team. It is the entire business. It is the people who run the core infrastructure. It's the people who secure it. It's the people who govern it. It's the developers and the operators, and the people who are going to come to those developers and operators and say, I want X, I want Y, because I need to change how I do things. I need to improve how I do things. And that should positively impact the business and make the business more agile and more competitive. Unlike cloud migration, where there's as little change as possible, cloud adoption should see changes to process, people, and skills. So what's going wrong? Well, I think I've pretty much hit that. The developers and operators are expecting the cloud. The business is expecting something completely new. And all they got was the same thing, the same ticket-based system somewhere else. Warning signs. It's the IT managers that sponsor. You can't get anywhere more senior than them, and therefore you're not able to talk to someone who has the authority to make the necessary changes to process, tools, and training. So this cloud journey, what should be happening to the organization? Well, time to take a shot, because you should be seeing a digital transformation. And I joke about taking a shot because we've all heard that phrase, and we've all rolled our eyes at digital transformation, but it's a real thing. I think Microsoft really came back to that about a year ago and started talking about using the phrase digital transformation again. I think, when they first started using it 4 or 5 years ago, it was just a marketing buzz phrase, and it didn't have the necessary meaning behind it. Now there is a meaning behind digital transformation, which is we should be seeing changes to people. I don't mean the actual, hey, we're getting rid of those staff, but how those people are organized. We should be seeing changes to processes, and we should be seeing changes to the tools that are being used. All of this should change how we're delivering IT to the business. So we should see more agility. We should see the ability to deliver services more quickly, change those services really quickly. So you deliver a minimally viable product. And if it's right, you evolve it and make it better and bigger. If it's not right, you can it and you start again without having invested a huge amount into it. You should have the governance that's there to enable self-service, so we don't have that fear of giving the developers and the operators the ability to do the things themselves, because the governance is already in place to lock down what they can actually do. Control where they're deploying things, the sizes of things that they're deploying, the types of things they're deploying, disable public IPs where necessary, etc. The audience here should be the business, not IT. It's a very, very different project, and it should involve different types of skills, not just technical skills, but it should also involve business people in this and process people. Speaking of process, that needs to change. So the classic waterfall project approach of delivering IT, that needs to go. That needs to be replaced with agile type deliveries. We should be seeing the waterfall project being gone and replaced with the backlog that you see in the likes of DevOps or other similar not ticketing, but project management systems. Vertical team alignments, the Windows team versus the Linux team versus the networking team versus the database team. That should be gone. We should be seeing multi-skilled teams working together, whether they're actually, from a HR perspective, all share the same manager or they have different managers, but we should be seeing at least teams, whether they're actual teams, org teams, or virtual teams, working together off of a common backlog. So you should see all the necessary skills from the project management, the security, the governance, the finance, the developers, the architects, the system administrators, all working together from the start, from the initial concept of a project, all the way through to delivery and maintenance and improvement. And those processes should be there before anything is put in the cloud. They should be used to deliver that first cloud landing zone. People, so how they are organized needs to change. They need to have skills that they've never had before. So for example, network administrators, I always find, have an awful time getting used to Azure networking because it's completely different. On-premises networking is what I call cable defined, whereas Azure networking is software defined. In cable defined networking, packets are predictable. They go from A to B based on where there's a cable, whereas in software defined networking, they just go from source to destination, any destination by default. So putting in security is a very different engineering process. The teams, the people, they need to be assessed. We need to figure out how do we make these processes that I just talked about possible by reorganizing how people are organized. And that's going to ruffle some feathers. The IT manager doesn't have the authority to do this stuff. So that's why we need to go senior to the IT manager, to the organization leadership, who have to say, these changes are happening whether you like it or not. Your little kingdom or fiefdom is going to be broken. And you're going to be put into something that suits the business, not your ego. Then people need to be assigned roles that are appropriate. Don't take the network administrator and make them a DBA in the cloud. You'll find networking roles for them. And the DBA on-prem is going to be the DBA in the cloud, etc. So people don't lose their job unless they're a SAM administrator, but people do not lose their job. People are qualified, they have skills, so you just have to evolve what those skills are. And those skills need to be developed before you go to the cloud or as you go to the cloud. We'll talk a little bit about that later on. The tools are going to completely change. Think about it. If you're working with the cloud right now and you're doing infrastructure as code, you're using a completely different set of tools than someone who's doing VMware or Hyper-V or whatever it is on-prem. So for example, I spend most of my time in Visual Studio Code, and I'm writing Bicep all day long. Did I ever do that before I worked with the cloud? No, I didn't do that. The closest I got to any of that was writing PowerShell scripts or VB scripts back in the day in Notepad. Using an IDE to develop code, storing that stuff in DevOps and GitHub, deploying my changes using pipelines or workflows, or heck, even GitOps. Those things were not even in my imagination. And yet today, that's how I work. And that's how we should be aiming to work in a mid to large organization. We should be aiming to deliver services using those tools because they make us better in the long run. They give us more control. They give us all the different things we aimed to have from the classic ITIL processes that weren't very agile. They give us those controls. They give us those reviews. They give us those rollbacks. The actual truth of what we're deploying is documented in the code. And it's always the truth because that's what we're deploying from. It's unlike the old documentation where, we tried to keep up to date in the likes of Confluence. Those things are never up to date because we never have time to go back to them. Whereas if we write the code and deliver the code and continue to use the code to deliver the systems, the code is accurate documentation of what's actually there. The organization should be changing. So we should be seeing these people, the process, the tools, spanning all these different skill sets. And the IT manager can't lead this change. That's what I said. So how do we avoid these different failures? Well, the tools that we are given are called Cloud Adoption Framework. AWS has a Cloud Adoption Framework, Google Cloud has a Cloud Adoption Framework, and Azure has a Cloud Adoption Framework. I only work with Azure, so it's the Azure Cloud Adoption Framework that I'm familiar with. This gives us a high-level view of the Cloud Adoption Framework. The top line you can see here from define strategy through to adopt is kind of the main track of delivering the change to the organization and then delivering the systems and driving the adoption of the cloud technologies in that organization. The bottom row, security, manage, and govern, is about providing the guardrails around this. So putting in the security systems, managing this environment and governing the environment so we have the guardrails, not only on how IT delivers things, but how the business consumes the cloud as well through self-service. So that bottom row is really important. Security, management, governance. This needs to be, you need to start this work before you actually deliver anything. So that ready phase is where the delivery actually starts. So you should have the guts of secure, manage, and govern, so the minimal viable product of that stuff done before the ready phase starts. You have to have an understanding of what your compliance requirements are, your security requirements, your cost management requirements, etc. need to be in place before you actually do anything. Then we start, well, where do we really start with this organization? Well, this should be defined strategy. And this is the key change here is defined strategy is done with the organization leadership. This cannot be done with the IT manager because what you're trying to get out of here is two things. An understanding of what the business really wants. That's the first thing we really want here. And the second thing we're after is an instruction from the leadership to the business saying change is coming. This is the change we are going to introduce. And if you don't like it, the door is over there. And that's really important. So you need to get rid of the resistance to change. And you need the authority to bring in the sort of changes that we're talking about. So first thing here is business motivations. Why are we talking about going to the cloud? And Microsoft gave us about a survey of about 20 questions. When me or my colleagues do this with a customer, we basically say, we're banning talk of IT. And we stick to these questions. Each of the consultants have different ways of going through the questions. Personally, I like to use a PowerPoint. And it literally has the question as a header on a blank PowerPoint. And I write out what the customer is telling me on the actual content part of the PowerPoint slide, so they can see what I'm talking about. Early on, what we find is people are very slow to talk to us. And as we go through the questions, they start talking more and more and more. And suddenly they start going back to the start and saying, hey, when we talked about this, I should have said a bit more. And we get a really good understanding of what it is from the business leadership about what they want from the cloud. And that leads us to the business outcomes. Right. It's one thing to say, why are we going to the cloud? Next thing is, what do we expect? Do we expect to have this cool thing that makes it possible to predict something in the future, or to make sense from these million IoT devices we have scattered around the world? Or are we expecting rapid delivery of micro changes in our workloads? That's the sort of thing that really, if you're thinking about what those each individual statements mean, those are different technical projects, different technical requirements. And having an understanding of that helps us figure out the rest of what we're going to deliver with that organization. We want to talk to accounts and understand, how do they budget for IT, and then how do we alter that to deal with the massive change of going from purchasing hardware every 5 to 7 years to moving to a unpredictable cost management system like the cloud, where there's a bill every month based on what you've used. So it might, especially if you have self-service, how do we put in guardrails around that? How do we give finance visibility into what's actually being done? And they really expect to see that before we actually deliver anything. So this is long before we even deliver anything. And prioritize project, well, from my perspective, that's where we produce a cloud strategy report for the customer that the company leadership sign off on. They become the authors of it. They communicate that to the rest of the business. And as an instruction to the business saying, this is the change we have authorized and we expect you to take part in. So it's no longer just move stuff to Azure or to AWS or whatever because we're canceling our hosting project. Now it's a much bigger project, and that's only a part. That migration is only a part of it. Plan is where we start changing things. So the first thing we do here, and it's more of a timing thing, is digital estate assessment. So any of you who've done migration stuff and you've run Azure Migrate or a third-party solution, you're going to do that here. And how you actually do that should change based on some of the expected business outcomes and the motivations of the organization. If it's, we need to move stuff because we're canceling a project or a hosting contract, it's the classic Azure migration thing. But if we want to do data democracy or democratization, or we want to become innovative, you may be looking at doing a different type of assessment where you're focusing more on data rather than on physical assets or virtual assets. So it could be a very different sort of assessment that you actually do. We start that early because that's a long process, and that will feed into later on in that adopt phase. That'll become a key ingredient or an input or parameter into that phase later on. Next is the initial organizational alignment. This is where we start saying, how are we going to change the organization to begin with? And that's an interesting thing. How are we going to change it to begin with? And I'm going to come back to that later on and show you a suggested approach. Then there's a skills readiness plan. So we've got an idea of how we're going to reorganize some of the teams. Now we need to plot what they're actually going to do, figure out the skills gaps, and start coming up with a plan to deal with those skills gaps. That could be, we're going to do official Microsoft training, or maybe there's some custom training that the consulting company or another consulting company can deliver, or maybe there's something else that could supplement that. We'll talk a little about an option later on. And here's the cloud adoption plan. So we figured out that stuff. Now, how do we do the next phase? So the ready phase. What is the plan for that? How are we actually going to build things? And how are we going to get different people involved with doing those different things? Because ideally, we want IT to be involved in delivering some of these things. Ready phase. Now we put in an operating model. Are we going to be using GitHub? Are we going to be using DevOps? Are we going to be using GitOps? Are we going to be using pipelines? Are we going to be workflows? Are we going to be doing ClickOps? We need to get that stuff figured out and implement it, because we're going to use that system to do the first deliveries. So this is those landing zone concepts. So we're going to drop in whatever those landing zones are. If we're doing big data, maybe we're going to take one of the landing zones for big data from Microsoft. Maybe we're going to use the AI landing zone from Microsoft. Maybe we're going to do custom hub and spoke, or maybe we're going to take Microsoft Enterprise Scale. Whatever it is, we're going to drop in some of that stuff using the operating model that we've put in place. There's going to be a lot of work in here, and this should be about getting the processes and tools in place and getting the Azure skeleton in place for the adopt phase. This is the bit that the business actually cares about. We're going to take the existing systems, we're going to migrate them. And maybe that migration is just a lift and shift. Maybe it's slight modernization. So with classic SQL databases, and matter got to be Azure SQL or SQL Managed Instance or whatever it is. Maybe we're going to modernize. Maybe we're not worried about deadlines. Maybe we're saying, well, yeah, we had this VM-centric point of view and big, heavy SQL point of view, and now we're just going to modernize it to a complete platform. And we're going to reinvent everything, re-architect, re-platform everything. Or it could be we're focusing on innovation. What's on-prem is on-prem. We're focusing on new stuff. Or it could be a hybrid of all three. And realistically, for most organizations, it is actually going to be a hybrid of all three. It depends on what the actual motivations are and what the expected business outcomes are. Again, it's really important to talk to the owners of the business to understand what they want from IT, because they are the owners of the service that is being delivered to them. And they should be the ones defining what's actually going to be there and how it's going to be delivered in the future, because they are the people signing the checks. Now, how do we get IT involved? So if we look at that operating model, how do we, and that initial organization alignment, how do we do it? Well, this is an approach my employers are starting to use, which is the Cloud Center of Excellence. Cloud Center of Excellence, or CCOE, is not a new concept. In fact, if you read about it, it looks an awful lot like something I read about in the early 1990s. Actually, it was created in the 1980s called MIS, where you have this central team of people who are subject matter experts, and they develop an expertise and they help the rest of the business. That's their job. And the Cloud Center of Excellence can be born within the organization itself with the assistance of external parties. So you can have various different skills from around IT and from the various different pillars of the business that have an input on how IT should be used. So whether that's finance, who are worried about how it's going to be paid for, governance and compliance, who are worried about regulations, architects who are designing things, developers who are building things, security who are obviously securing things, all under supervision of senior leadership. The IT manager doesn't have authority for these people, really only cares about the IT staff. So you need someone senior to that. And even you could say the CTO is probably not enough, because you're talking about governance and compliance and security. So you need realistically someone at the board level who is going to be assigned the role from the board to say, I am going to supervise this thing and how it's going to deliver services to the business. So it's not just IT services that we're talking about. These are business services. That CCOE is going to have a core set of skills, and they're going to slowly build things, initially with the assistance of consultants. And the consultants will work with them, teach them how to do things, but it should be less of the consultants doing things and more of the team itself actually doing these things under the supervision and the coaching of the consultants. So the consultants should be consulting. Here's a strange phrase, not doing stuff as contractors, but consulting and working and coaching and teaching this customer how to do things. So they're going to be delivering their operations as support. They're going to be doing their initial migrations, their initial builds, and that should be producing templates. Then the CCOE is going to hand over things gradually. So initially, CCOE is going to run things, but gradually they're going to hand over responsibility of the operations roles to the IT operations team, because the CCOE's job is to consult internally and to teach internally, take the knowledge that they've built and become the internal support organization for the cloud. They'll teach and support IT operations. They'll teach and support the developers and operators. So they'll take over those initial builds. Templates are still being built. And now we see a change in role. CCOE is no longer actually doing the direct builds and the direct designs. Instead, they're assisting and supervising. So they should be involved in every project. When IT operations are trying to figure out how to do something better, they should be coming to CCOE and saying, hey, this isn't working great for us, or we see a challenge here, or there's an opportunity here. Can you help us figure this out and do it better? Developers and operators should be coming in and saying, hey, we're building a new workload, and the business expects it to do X, Y, and Z. Can you work with us to figure out the best way of doing that? The templates that we've built over time should be used to help build out these solutions. And again, new templates will be built out as a result of this. And you'll have this cycle where templates are being improved, built, and reused again and again. And slowly, you should see change happening. Now, this is really important. What's the key ingredient here? I've talked about this several times. It's leadership from the organization. That is the active ingredient. Without it, the bread is not going to rise. Change has to happen. People, organization, the skills, the tools all need to change. How the actual delivery of technical services beyond IT needs to change. And it needs to become a cooperative process with all these different pillars. The IT manager doesn't have the authority to make these changes. It requires organization leadership. And you need to have contact with those people to begin with. And that's the hard bit. Really, really is, to be quite honest, the hard bit, because typically the customer comes to the cloud from the IT manager, who then isn't empowered to be able to raise this project up to the level that it needs to be. And that's a real difficult challenge. So final thoughts. Your ability to push change once this project starts is very, very difficult. As I said, the IT manager doesn't have the authority to make the change that's actually required. You need to go above them. And very often they either don't want the project to go above them, or they don't feel like they can raise it up because they don't have the authority to push back up the chain. Expectations are already set. People have already communicated that this project is going to cost X, it's going to finish by Y. And the various different avenues to open that up are gone. As a consultant, it's kind of depressing that with that initial kickoff meeting with the customer where the project is going to go. I've had that conversation. I remember a post-mortem after a kickoff meeting, and I said to the sales guy, project's dead. 12, 18 months, the customer is not going to be happy. We will do an amazing migration, but I can tell you the customer will not be happy in 12, 18 months, because I could smell the same conversations again and again. And the hardest bit about this is the bigger the organization, the worse this can be, because there can be some ego stuff there. And it's a pity, because those are the organizations that require that leadership involvement at the very start. And without that leadership involvement, you won't get the change that's actually required. And that's the end of my session. I hope there's been a lot of information in there. I hope I've opened some eyes. And I hope that I've shown what really needs to happen, which is very difficult to achieve. So if there's any questions, Sean, I'm happy to deal with them.
Yeah, so thank you, Aidan, for a great presentation. So now we'll get into the questions and answer part. Should you wish to ask a question, please feel free to type it in the questions box now. So just our first question today is, could you please go over the concept of a landing zone? It is an exoskeleton that supports the migration of workloads from on-prem to the cloud.
Yeah, it's basically a templated environment. So, for example, the hot topic right now is AI. And if you were going into Azure, Microsoft have a landing zone for OpenAI. And the concept here is, instead of you having to figure out, what are the basic components to make OpenAI work, Microsoft are giving you a landing zone, which is basically a templated environment to say, right, this is what it typically should look like. It's not always what it should be, but we're giving you this. And if you deploy this, you should be able to start building out an application or a solution from this. That's one concept. Another might be a landing zone, and you'll hear this phrase inside of my company. Landing zone might be a hub. So we have a very componentized way of delivering Azure to a customer. So a networking hub or a transit network. And I've recently been working on our new version of that landing zone, and that's basically what we view as an ideal environment for building secured shared networking for a mid to large organization. And we have a bunch of parameters to tweak and customize that thing based on the actual requirements of the customer. So it's basically an environment where you drop it into Azure, and it should be the starting point of building out whatever your particular solution is.
Perfect. So that's the next thing, which is thanks again. Great session, Aidan. And then the next question after that is,
Thank you.
how do you ensure compliance and data security during and after the adoption process?
um, oh, that's a big question. Um, so that's a whole bunch of different tooling, and that's God. That's a you could spend a day just talking about that to begin with. So the core thing in Azure would be Azure policy. So you need to figure out what your actual requirements are, what it is you need to control, and then you build out your policies based on that. And from those policies, you build out the technical tools that will help you enforce those policies or audit those policies. So that can be a combination of different things. It could be Azure policy, for example, where we can build out hard guardrails on what the actual ARM actions are possible in Azure. I say ARM because I'm talking about the underlying APIs, not the actual language. Um, and so, for example, if we're putting in a policy to say that stuff must be in a certain Azure region to be compliant. So I mentioned the Archive law in Norway. So if we're saying everything needs to be in Norway East, we can put an Azure policy, in place within a management group architecture for organizing our subscriptions, and we can say, right, anything within this scope of management groups needs to be in Norway East. And if it's not in Norway East, we deny it. And we can put it in a custom explanation to actually explain to the developer or the operator to say that's not possible because you're supposed to be staying in Norway East to comply with a particular law. Or you could restrict things to the European Union. So if you're a European customer, you want to stop people from putting stuff outside the European Union where it's not going to follow the correct laws for the European Union. So you can do that. You can, from a data plane point of view, you can use things like Purview, which is Microsoft Purview. So it used to be an Azure product, and now it's bigger than just Azure. There's a whole bunch of different things. You could be using your Azure ID, or sorry, your Entra ID governance. There's a whole bunch of different things in Microsoft Cloud for dealing with governance and control over self-service. So it's not a small topic, and you'll find subject matter experts in even individual parts of that.
Perfect. Thanks, Aidan. So just the next question there is, how long will COE work? Is it something that stays with
Yeah,
organization
it
for a
should
much
be.
longer time than adoption phase?
Yes, it should be. It should be something that grows and evolves, and possibly even the people inside of it change. So the idea really is, and in the initial build out of Azure, it should be a bunch of people who are just learning cloud for the first time from the outside parties who do know about cloud, and whether they're hired in as full-time employees or they're brought in as consultants or whatever. And they learn from those external parties, and then they become the subject matter experts in their particular areas. So you're going to have people who become data specialists, you're going to have people who become security specialists, people who become governance specialists, and they should learn from those external parties, do the initial build, but then their role should change to being the internal support team. So they should be the ones that supervise and basically become the architects of cloud. So they should be the ones that are coaching the rest of the business and gradually learning new technologies, new skills, or importing those skills, whether it's through new hires or transfers or whatever. So for example, initial days, you might be focused on doing a migration. So it's building out governance, building out security and networking, and migrating your workloads into the cloud and doing some basic PaaS stuff. But then a year's time, 2 years time, it might be a big drive to do big data and AI. And 2 years after that, there might be a big drive to start doing IoT. So the CCOE should be there constantly, working with the various different teams within the organization. So it shouldn't be something just for the initial build. It should be something that's there, develops, grows, evolves, and is constantly, working with the rest of the organization.
Perfect. So someone just said again, spot on, session 8 and spot on. I could hear my customers' voices. So
Hopefully you
just
don't work with me.
so just the next question, I think this is the last one, is how do you future-proof a cloud adoption strategy to adapt to technological advancements and changing business needs?
Sorry, Sean, could you repeat that?
How do you future-proof a cloud adoption strategy to adapt to technological advancements and changing business needs?
Uh, well, that's why we stay agile. Um, because the reality is things change. What you're told today, there could be a change of CEO in 6 months' time. Or there may be something that was kept classified from you. So I had a project like that where there was a significant thing happening that was kept classified from us because of contractual reasons. The leadership couldn't share a certain thing with us until it was announced to the stock market. And that's just the way it is. And you can't, it's important with, I think, anything these days. I don't think even just technology, but I think any sort of planning, like business planning. And I've heard this, being discussed on podcasts and radio, where the classic waterfall project approach that's used in every project plan in business doesn't work. Within a week, it's already dead. The project plan has changed so much that nobody's able to keep track of it anymore. Um, things should be, documents should be alive. They should be versioned. And plans should be agile. And we don't plan too far down the road. We have high-level milestones, but there's no point in me putting together a detailed plan for something that's going to happen in 6 months' time. It's absolutely pointless. I should have milestones for 6 months' time. I'm more worried about what's happening in the next 2 to 4 weeks and focusing on current sprints. So that should be the approach that we deal with that. And if there's going to be changes to that plan, that should be something that leadership need to be involved in. They need to be communicating that with you. There needs to be a change control process on that. Then obviously there's going to be impacts on what's actually happening. If the business turns around, takes a 90-degree turn on the strategy, well, obviously they need to realize that what you've done up to now is dead, and that communication needs to be in two ways. But I haven't seen that sort of change in a project personally. Not a cloud build out project anyway. You hear about those things in the news, but they're usually something very, very different involving SAP. Um,
Um, so just another question just came in there, Aidan, if that's all right. Um,
yep.
are there any additional tools used to conduct a digital estate assessment besides Azure migration?
Um, there can be. You'll find different consulting companies like different tools. I've typically just been involved with the classic migration scenario, so not doing data estate management or anything like that. So it's been more the machine assessment. Personally, I have never had the opportunity and the projects I've gotten to do to use Azure Migrate much. A lot of the migration projects I get to work on are what we call messy, and so me and some of my other colleagues get brought into them. And a lot of the time I end up using literally the performance management tools and interviews with people to figure out what the heck we've actually got, because we don't have the opportunity to use either Microsoft tooling or third-party tooling. You'll find every consulting company out there has their own preferred tooling. Therefore, people who are doing it internally may go out there and evaluate different tools and find something they like or something they don't like. Azure Migrate is good. Is it brilliant? No. My own company, we've used other tooling in the past. It was expensive and wasn't necessarily that great either. I find a lot of human interpretation is usually involved with any of these tools to get a good plan for moving the customer to the cloud. but you'll find there's a whole bunch of different tooling that's necessary. Like database migration, you're going to need specialized tooling for that. Again, Microsoft have a bunch of different tools for doing database assessments and migrations. Um, as I saw recently today doing the AZ305 exam, there's more than one answer to that question. So sometimes even Microsoft offer multiple tools for doing the same job, and it's actually finding the right tool for the particular job in question.
Perfect. So on behalf of the ESPC community, we'd like to extend a big thank you to you again, Aidan, for
No
taking
problem.
time today to carry out this webinar. We really appreciate it.
No problem at all. Glad to be here, and thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, so that's the end of today's webinar. You can find this webinar and more at sharepointeurope.com/resource center. Thanks again to all of you for joining us today, and I hope you'll join us again soon. Take care.